Glorilla, the Grammy-nominated rapper known for her raw authenticity, just lived through one of the most shocking twists of her career. In a matter of days, she went from victim of a terrifying home invasion to facing felony drug charges that could lock her away for years. The craziest part? She wasn't even home when it happened. Here's how one night turned her world and the internet upside down.
The home invasion that started it all. It all began in the early hours of Saturday, July 20th, 2025. Around 1:30 a.m., a quiet night in Forsyth County, Georgia, shattered into chaos when a group of intruders targeted Glorilla's home, a property sitting about 40 miles outside Atlanta. She wasn't there. The 25-year-old Memphis star was hundreds of miles away, lighting up the stage at the WNBA All-Star Game halftime show in Indianapolis. But inside her Georgia home, family members were staying over, expecting nothing more than a peaceful night. That calm was destroyed the moment glass shattered and heavy footsteps echoed through the house. Imagine being jolted awake by the sound of strangers moving where they have no business being. The burglars weren't just looking for quick cash. They had their eyes on high-value jewelry, and they were bold enough to keep going even after realizing people were inside. One family member, armed and determined to protect the home, fired shots at the intruders. The situation turned into a life-and-death standoff in seconds. Fortunately, no one inside was harmed, and by some miracle, none of the suspects were hit. Still, the shock lingered, not just from the danger, but from the audacity of breaking into a celebrity's home while people were there. Law enforcement treated the scene like the serious crime it was. Deputies swarmed the property, drones buzzed overhead, and canine units swept the area. Detectives combed for evidence, determined to track down the suspects. But despite all those resources, the burglars slipped away into the night, leaving behind only fragments of physical evidence. At this point, it should have been a straightforward case, a violent home invasion with multiple armed suspects still on the loose. But what happened next would twist this story into something no one could have predicted, turning Glorilla from victim to the one in handcuffs.
The shocking turn from victim to suspect. What should have remained a clear-cut burglary investigation took an unexpected and, for many, infuriating turn. While deputies processed the scene, searching for clues about the intruders, something else caught their attention. A strong odor they claimed was consistent with illegal narcotics. That single observation shifted the focus of the entire investigation. Instead of staying locked in on catching the burglars, the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office called in the Lanier Regional Drug Task Force. Within hours, they secured a search warrant, not for stolen jewelry or evidence linked to the home invasion, but for potential drugs inside Glorilla's own house. The family, already shaken from the break-in, suddenly saw law enforcement combing through the place for an entirely different reason. According to reports, the search turned up what authorities described as a significant amount of marijuana in plain sight, plus more stored in the master bedroom closet. But here's where the details get murky. Glorilla's legal team pushed back, claiming the amount was actually small, nowhere near what could justify calling it significant. That discrepancy would become a key talking point in the weeks to follow. The search also uncovered an unspecified Schedule I controlled substance. In Georgia, Schedule I drugs are the most serious classification, substances with no accepted medical use and high potential for abuse, like heroin, LSD, or MDMA. But law enforcement didn't specify exactly what they'd found, how much was there, or whether it could be tied directly to Glorilla herself. Still, the charges came down fast. She was hit with felony possession of marijuana over 1 ounce and felony possession of a Schedule I controlled substance. Both carry heavy penalties in Georgia, with potential prison time ranging from 3 to 14 years if convicted on both counts. And here's the part that sparked outrage. The burglars were still at large, but the only arrest made that week was Glorilla's. Glorilla speaks out and social media erupts. When news broke that Glorilla had been arrested, confusion rippled across the internet. How could someone go from being the victim of a violent home invasion to facing felony charges in just a few days? Fans and industry insiders were stunned, and Glorilla wasn't about to stay silent. On July 24th, just 2 days after turning herself in and posting a $22,260 bond, she took to X to set the record straight in her own words. Her post was blunt, frustrated, and unapologetic. "It's crazy. My house got invaded on Saturday. I was in Indianapolis performing for the WNBA All-Star Game, and instead of focusing on finding the suspects, they focused on some cannabis. Number 1, no, I wasn't busted. Number 2, my house got robbed. Number 3, I wasn't home. Long story short, my house gets invaded and I'm the only one that gets arrested." Within an hour, the post had racked up nearly 3,000 retweets, 17,000 likes, and over 400 replies. But it wasn't just about numbers. It was the fire behind those responses. Fans were furious, accusing law enforcement of wasting resources on victim blaming instead of catching the real criminals. Many saw her case as yet another example of flawed priorities in the justice system. The outrage wasn't limited to her fan base. Other artists, influencers, and everyday people shared her post, calling the situation backwards and a slap in the face to every crime victim. For Glorilla, this wasn't just venting, it was strategic. By going public immediately, she seized control of the narrative before it could be spun against her. She positioned herself not as a scandal-ridden celebrity, but as a wronged victim demanding accountability. And that was just the beginning. Instead of laying low and waiting for the storm to pass, Glorilla was about to make a bold move that would keep her name in headlines and turn this controversy into something no one saw coming.
Turning controversy into a brand move. Most celebrities, when faced with serious legal charges, go dark. They pull back from public appearances, let their lawyers do the talking, and hope the media storm fades. Glorilla? She went in the opposite direction. Just 3 days after her arrest, she was back in her hometown of Memphis, not hiding, but performing at her highly anticipated first annual Glow Bash on July 25th, 2025. And she didn't just show up. She made an entrance. Walking through the crowd like a queen returning to her throne, she soaked in the cheers, the camera flashes, and a wave of support from fans who had been defending her non-stop online. The message was loud and clear. She wasn't going anywhere. But the boldest move came in the form of merchandise. At the concert, fans could buy $40 t-shirts printed with Glorilla's own mugshot, the same one that had been splashed across headlines just days earlier. The strategy was genius in its audacity. Instead of letting the mugshot become a symbol of shame, she reclaimed it as a badge of resilience and defiance. It turned a legal setback into a marketing win, creating an instant collector's item for her most loyal supporters. Of course, this came with risks. While the stunt strengthened her connection with core fans, many of whom saw this as the ultimate turning pain into power move, it could also make corporate sponsors nervous. Brands like Fenty Beauty, which had previously worked with Glorilla, tend to avoid prolonged association with controversy. Still, the timing and execution were flawless from a cultural standpoint. By controlling the narrative and monetizing her arrest, Glorilla proved she wasn't going to be defined by a police report. She was going to define herself and keep the bag rolling in the process. And while this merch drop was grabbing headlines, it was also setting the stage for a bigger conversation. What this arrest meant for her career, her reputation, and her place in the industry moving forward.
The bigger picture, career and industry impact. Glorilla's ability to turn her arrest into a viral moment didn't happen in a vacuum. It's rooted in the career she's been building since 2022. Bursting onto the scene with her Grammy-nominated hit, FNF, Let's Go, she quickly earned collaborations with heavyweights like Cardi B on Tomorrow 2 and Megan Thee Stallion on Wannabe. Her 2024 debut album, Glorious, scored 2 Grammy nominations for the single Yeo, cementing her as one of hip-hop's most promising young voices. That's why this legal situation hits differently. She's not just any rising rapper. She's an artist with industry backing, critical acclaim, and a growing mainstream presence. Her record label has already voiced support, emphasizing her presumption of innocence, a move that signals to venues, collaborators, and sponsors that she's still seen as a valuable asset despite the controversy. But there's no denying the risks. This arrest is her second brush with the law in Georgia in less than 2 years. In April 2024, she was pulled over in Gwinnett County and charged with DUI, open container, and traffic violations. While that incident didn't derail her career, it did add a mark to her public record. Repeated legal troubles can raise concerns about reliability, a red flag for festival organizers, corporate partners, and big-budget collaborations. For Glorilla, the challenge is balancing the raw authenticity her fans love with the polished image that brands prefer. Hip-hop audiences often embrace controversy as a sign of realness, but corporations lean toward safe bets who won't ignite headlines for the wrong reasons. It's a tightrope act, and one misstep could shift public perception. The next move she makes, musically, legally, and publicly, will be critical. Handle it right, and she could emerge even bigger. Handle it wrong, and doors could quietly start closing. And history has plenty of lessons on which way it could go.
Lessons from music legends. Glorilla's situation might feel unprecedented, but the music industry has seen plenty of stars face serious charges and still thrive. The difference often comes down to how they control their narrative and keep their momentum. Take Lil Wayne. In 2008, he was arrested in Arizona after police found cocaine, ecstasy, and marijuana on his tour bus. That kind of bust could have ended a career, but Wayne stayed in the studio, kept touring, and dropped The Carter 3, which sold millions and won a Grammy. His takeaway? Don't disappear. Keep feeding your fans, and you can outlast the headlines. The Notorious B.I.G. faced drug and weapons charges in 1996 during the height of East Coast-West Coast tensions. Instead of crumbling under pressure, he doubled down on his work, recording Life After Death. His arrest didn't weaken his street credibility. If anything, it strengthened his authenticity with fans who saw him as living what he rapped. David Bowie, though from a different genre, handled his 1976 marijuana arrest with quiet confidence. The charges were eventually dropped, but he kept touring and creating. The scandal became a footnote, not a defining moment, because he stayed focused on his craft. Then there's Snoop Dogg, who practically wrote the playbook on flipping legal troubles into brand gold. His cannabis-related arrests became part of his identity, fueling ventures like Leafs by Snoop and solidifying his place as hip-hop's most famous marijuana advocate. The common threads? Consistency, authenticity, and control of the narrative. Fans rally around artists who own their stories instead of running from them. For Glorilla, the opportunity is clear. She has a unique advantage most of these legends didn't: a victim narrative and the power of modern social media. If she can keep making music, stay visible, and frame this as a fight against injustice, she can turn this moment into a career-defining comeback. But legends also prove one thing: mishandling the spotlight in a scandal can close doors for good. The next chapter will show which path Glorilla takes.
Why Glorilla's case stands apart. Plenty of music legends have faced legal heat, but Glorilla's situation has a twist that makes it stand out. She wasn't pulled over with drugs in her car, caught on a tour bus search, or busted backstage after a show. She was at a completely different city, performing at a major event when her home was broken into. The police came to investigate a violent burglary, and somehow she ended up being the one in cuffs. That distinction is huge. For Lil Wayne, the drugs were found on his tour bus. For Snoop Dogg, it was during traffic stops. For David Bowie, it happened after a concert, with him present. Those scenarios gave the public and prosecutors a direct link between the artist and the alleged crime. Glorilla's case flips that script entirely. She can point to a clear victim narrative. She called for help, and instead of justice, she got charges. This framing hits at a time when public trust in law enforcement is already fragile, and conversations about overreach, bias, and victim blaming are front and center. Social media gives her an unprecedented advantage, something Biggie and Bowie never had. She can instantly share her side, bypass the media filter, and mobilize millions of supporters with a single post. But this power is fragile. Her 2024 DUI arrest is a reminder that public goodwill can be short-lived if patterns emerge. Right now, the cultural moment is leaning in her favor. Fans see her as a target of an unfair system, but another misstep could shift that sympathy into skepticism fast. Handled strategically, this could elevate her into a symbol of resilience and defiance in hip-hop, someone who didn't just survive controversy, but thrived because of it. Mishandled, it could turn her from a victim into a cautionary tale. The choice and the legacy are hers to shape.
The road ahead. Glorilla's story is still unfolding, and the stakes couldn't be higher. On one side, she faces serious felony charges in a state known for tough drug laws. On the other, she holds a wave of public support, a loyal fan base, and a narrative that paints her as the wronged party. How she navigates the coming months will decide whether this moment becomes a stepping stone or a stumbling block. Her path forward will hinge on a few key factors. First, the legal outcome. If her team can get the charges reduced, dismissed, or resolved through a plea deal, she can minimize the long-term damage. A drawn-out trial or conviction, however, could disrupt her momentum and close doors in the industry. Second, her music output. Fans have short attention spans, and the best way to keep them engaged is to keep giving them something to rally around. Lil Wayne did it during his legal battles. Snoop turned his charges into part of his image, and Biggie stayed in the studio even under pressure. Glorilla can do the same, using her art to tell her side of the story in a way court documents never could. Third, her branding. The mugshot merch move showed she's willing to take risks and flip controversy into opportunity. The challenge now is sustaining that energy without overplaying it or alienating potential sponsors. This case has already made Glorilla more than just an entertainer. It's positioned her as a voice in conversations about justice, fairness, and how victims are treated. If she leans into that role, she could come out of this not just with her career intact, but with a stronger cultural presence than ever before. The hip-hop game has always respected artists who keep it real under pressure. Now, the world is watching to see if Glorilla can turn the hardest moment of her career into the defining chapter of her legacy.